I think the year was 1987, not 100% sure. Either way, it was a long time ago when I MD'd my second ever musical. In fact, when I auditioned for that particular company, I had to teach the quintet from West Side Story. And then, some 4 months later, in September of the same year, I did West Side Story a second time for another company in another town. And because of this musical has always been a little bit special to me. So, when I heard there was to be a remake of the 1961 film, it was going to be a date in the diary for sure. Now, I don't go to the cinema or movie theatre that much, to be honest. Well, unless it's a James Bond film, or in musical terms, Miss Saigon when it was shown in the cinema a few years ago. It needs to be something quite special for me to go. So, when I heard about this film, and armed with my $9.99 ticket, I headed to Screen 5 and settled down to be entertained and immersed in this fantastic story that made an impact on me all those years ago. But the thing is, I wasn't prepared for the effect it had on me all these years later. Now, I wish I could play some of the music here, but YouTube won't allow that, so I'll trust that you know the fantastic melodies and arrangements I'm talking about already. Now, I can't remember the first time I saw the 1961 film of the musical, but what I can remember is that it made no impression on me whatsoever. Like I've said many times, musical numbers in musicals need to further the plot in some way, to aid the storytelling, if you will. But in the 1961 film, the music was, well, kind of in the background. It could even be known as incidental music. It made no impact on me personally at all. Bernstein himself wasn't happy with the recordings made for the film either. To add impact to the original 30-piece orchestration, they decided to add 6 saxophones, 8 trumpets, and, wait for it, 5 pianos. Bernstein said it became overwhelming and lacking in texture. Further to this, of course, it's well documented that Natalie Wood in the role of Maria had been overdubbed, as were other members of the cast, and the film had numerous overdubbings and retakes. The producers made considerable changes to the original musical first staged in 1957. It didn't work for me, even though it won, wait for it, a staggering 11 Oscars. So then, to the more recent Steven Spielberg's version. Well, of course, sound recording technology has changed beyond description since 1961, and wow, does that show. No longer is the music secondary to the film, it's right there, on the front row, right in your face, aiding the storytelling and, of course, in glorious surround sound. It furthers the plot in every way. Okay, some of the musical numbers in a slightly different order from the original stage version, but does that really matter? I don't think so. And I didn't detect any changes to the Sondheim lyrics either. Womb to tomb, sperm to worm, it's all there. Not the dumbed-down version that changed those lyrics specifically to satisfy the senses of the day. Okay, the dialogue is very different to the stage version, but I don't mind that if it aids the storytelling, which it certainly does. At times it's a mixture of English and Spanish, without subtitles, that alternates seamlessly and doesn't detract in any way. In fact, it makes the characters even more real, if that's possible. The character of Doc is replaced completely with his widow and, very cleverly, Puerto Rican herself. One character, for me, took on a completely different persona than any version I'd seen previously. The character of Riff has always been seen as just the leader of the gang, that of course gets bumped off at the end of Act 1. But the Riff in this version actually has a character of his own, an out-of-control street rat, if you will, who has real purpose. For those of you that know the musical, you may agree with me that the number cool doesn't quite sit right in the musical order. I don't necessarily mean the order in which they appear, but cool didn't seem to have a reason to be included at all. But In this version, it certainly does. It addresses two questions in my mind. Number one, what is the number trying to say? And two, where does Chino get that gun from? Now, I won't spoil it for anyone that hasn't seen the film yet, but suffice to say, the gun is the vehicle. That, to me, is the purpose of this number. One of the criticisms of musical theatre, or musicals in general, is that it's said to be unnatural for characters to just burst into song. And yeah, I agree that it is. But in this film, you're not conscious of this at all. Yes, you can hear the intros to the musical numbers that we all know, but the way it's filmed, the way it's lit, the believability of every character, you actually find yourself being immersed in this film. And it's therefore natural to sing these glorious melodies. I'm not surprised that musicals get this reputation sometimes of not being natural, when, after all, some of the subjects that they cover we can't quite relate to. Musicals based on real-life events, though, like Cabaret or Fiddler on the Roof. In fact, for me, any musical with a non-happy ending will get my vote every time. If you cry at the end, it's got power. If everyone gets paired up and there's a wedding and you come out feeling, and then forget it quite quickly. In 1985, the making of West Side Story was a kind of fly-on-the-wall type film that recorded Bernstein himself conducting his work, with, amongst others, Kirita Kanua and Jose Carreras. Now, although this may be a little bit too opera for my liking, what it did do was to give an insight into the composer's intention for tempo of each number. I recently asked a question as a conversation starter in a Facebook group, some of you may have seen it, and I asked the question, should tempo be influenced by the choreographer in our productions? Controversial, huh? There were many answers, from whatever serves the production to the author's original tempos at all costs. Well, this film certainly follows the latter. It was as though Bernstein himself could have been conducting the recording. You'd expect the cinematography in a film such as this, and with a director such as Steven Spielberg, to be outstanding, and it is. The use of light, and particularly the use of shadows in the death sequences, are particularly effective and moving. The story is told in a hard-hitting, no-holds-barred type way. 60 years after the original, the subjects of gang culture, racism, love, knife crime, murder and family are just as true today as they were when the original musical was penned. The music itself, for me, though, is the star. It's just timeless, and yes, it could have been written yesterday. It's not a musical of chords or chord structures or trying out rap sequences to be different. Neither is it a film score of soaring strings, synth pads and choirs, that sound known as epic. Blimey, I hate that word, epic music. Oh, and there's no Zimmer drumming either, in the hope that it will add emphasis. The music itself does it all. Go and see it on the big screen if you can. I'd go as far as to say that it will have the same impact, if not more, than if you saw it live on stage. Well done, Mr. Spielberg. A masterpiece in every aspect.